Hi, everybody. This is take two on what's new in the updated FDA guidance for breakthrough designation. I got in at midnight last night and I'm a little bit punchy. So sometimes we make mistakes and you just start over again. So, number one criteria for the breakthrough designation is it either has to be for a life threatening condition or a severely debilitating disease. One of those two have to be met, and it has to be a more effective treatment or diagnosis for that life threatening disease or severely debilitating disease. So that's criteria one. If it's not more effective treatment or diagnosis for life threatening or severely debilitating diseases, you don't meet the criteria for a breakthrough device designation program. So that's the most important thing to consider. Now, the other criteria two, is it a breakthrough technology? You don't have to meet these second criteria. You have to meet one of them. So, not all of them, one of the four. But as long as you meet criteria one and one of the four criteria twos, you're going to be okay. So, A, is it breakthrough technology? B, are there no alternatives to this? C, is there a significant advantage of over existing technology? And D, is it in the best interest of the patient? So these are the criteria for the Breakthrough Device Designation Program. There's no change between what was required and what is required now. So the guidance hasn't changed what the criteria are. But the guidance was modified by them adding a one little section for additional considerations. Now, of course, there are minor tweaks throughout the document where they've updated some references. But in terms of the criteria, no change. The minor changes are in the additional considerations. So we have criteria one, we have no change. Criteria two, one of those four things, no change. Section three, additional considerations for the breakthrough program. A, B, and C haven't changed. D is a completely new addition. So A, for additional considerations, the regulatory pathway. If you ask about the regulatory pathway, that's not the purpose of the breakthrough program. That's a separate program called the 513G. Or if you think you know what it is, you could confirm it in a pre-sub. The purpose of the breakthrough program is to identify devices that are needed on the market, that they need to expedite the availability of these products. So regardless of the regulatory pathway, they're going to make a decision, do we need to expedite this or not? The next item, there are multiple devices on the market with the same intended use. That's another consideration they have. So, of course, the more devices that are on the market with that same intended use, the less likely they're going to want to make this available. So they're not saying what one of the criteria too is like no alternatives. If there are multiple alternatives, the more there are, the less likely they are to consider your device. C, a combination product. So that impacts whether they're going to let it into this program or not. And D, this is the new criteria that they're going to consider. And this is an important addition, disparities in healthcare. So if we look at pediatric devices, there are not enough pediatric devices out there. And if you develop a product for pediatrics, it's not going to have nearly the market that it would have for the whole population. So there are fewer companies that want to develop a product that's specific to pediatrics in certain needs of the pediatric population, such as size and in the development of their body frame and other things. Those are going to be specific to that population, and you really need to design the device for that population. But companies don't want to do it because it costs a lot of money to develop a separate device just for that population. Same thing with very elderly patients. There's not as much desire to create something that can only be used by the geriatric population when you could develop a similar product that would be for all ages, or at least the majority of the population. And another category would be rare diseases. And they use the example of sickle cell disease. There aren't that many people that have these diseases. So developing a product just for that population would be less cost effective for a medical device company than if they pick a disease that hits a broader number of people. Now, we're not talking about necessarily a product that's humanitarian device exemptions, though that would certainly qualify, but this could be something that's over the 8,000 person limit per year um, for the devices that are considered for the humanitarian device exemption, but still a rare population. So this is this new category that they have for consideration to try to encourage the reviewers and make it clear to companies, you know, we consider first priority, you have to meet this criteria. It has to be for life-threatening or seriously debilitating diseases, and it has to be an enhanced um, effectiveness of treatment or diagnosis. Then we have the second criteria. It's one of these four. So you could have breakthrough technology, but there are other alternatives, but this one's better, much more accurate, much faster, whatever it is. And then they look at your technology and they say, oh, but this company is focusing on this patient population. So it's in the best interest of this patient population to make it available because there aren't enough products that are designed for children or people with this rare disease type. So those could be the criteria. It could also be other things like uh, geographic. Sorry, it could be geographic diversity. You could have something where people are in a rural population and can't make it to an emergency center soon enough. And making it available in a pre-hospital environment might be a big difference. So it's in the best interest of those patients. It could be that we've designed it for a population that are specific ethnicity, so you could have certain diseases that only affect that disease population or that ethnicity or age or race, whatever it is. If it only affects that population, then companies are less likely to develop these products. So these are some of the criteria they've included now as an additional consideration when they try to decide whether they're going to accept a device for the breakthrough device designation or not. Now, are there massive changes to this? No. That's one little section, and it's buried down two-thirds of the way through the document. It's not criteria one, it's not criteria two, it's additional considerations the FDA can use for making their decision. So decide which which is the best way to position your product to the FDA. You always want to start with the first criteria. You will probably meet one of the secondary criteria just by default if you're developing a new technology. And then for this, and it's an improvement over existing technology. And then the last piece is additional considerations that you can point out to the FDA to help your chances. So, bottom line, not significant changes to the breakthrough device designation program because of this new guidance, but they've articulated this new additional consideration you might include. Now, for people that don't know how to submit these, don't know how to prepare the document, they give you an example at the back of the guidance. Now, we also make it free. You can just fill out a form and download our templates, and you can use that as a template for submitting your breakthrough device designation. We can help you with it. We've gotten breakthrough device designation for two other clients, and um, but you don't have to um, do it exactly the way we do it. You can follow the FDA's guidance, and they give you an example. Other things I'd like to say about the breakthrough device designation program, there's been a lot of people that say, well, we don't have any clinical data, so we can't do this yet. That is a big factor. If you don't have clinical data, it's much harder to get breakthrough device designation from the FDA, but it's not impossible. We actually had a client that had no clinical data, they only had cadaver data. And because of the type of device it was, they were able to demonstrate that it was a significant improvement in the effectiveness, and they could reasonably show, yes, it would do that just with a cadaver model. And it was showing how quickly their device would work versus other devices, and that had a major impact in the safety for those patients undergoing that procedure. Another device we worked on only had 6 patients. Normally, you would say there's no way a study with 6 patients could be powered so it could demonstrate that it would be substantially more effective than existing technologies out there. But this particular one was. So it was almost like an on-off light switch. Like you don't have the device, you you're missing uh, these patients can't do this, they are unable to. You give them this treatment, all of a sudden it enables them to do so much more that they couldn't do before. So it's empowering, almost like the difference between, somebody that's paralyzed and can't move versus somebody that now has the ability to walk. Um, that's the kind of things that we're looking for in these breakthrough device designation programs. Now, what do you do if you don't qualify for the breakthrough device designation program? They have another program called the STEP program. And if you're interested in the STEP program, we actually have templates for the STEP program as well. And we filled out application for those. It's not significantly harder to fill out, it's very similar. If you want to apply for the STEP program, you can't be eligible for the breakthrough program. So, breakthrough device program should be your first priority. If you don't qualify for that, then you do the STEP program. You can just apply for the STEP program if you're pretty sure you don't qualify for this breakthrough program, but you could apply to breakthrough first, fail, and then apply for a STEP. It just takes longer. So, you have the STEP program, you have the breakthrough program. One of the things that's similar between these two that's important to understand, you have to provide the same documentation except for your rationale for eligibility for the program. So a device description is required, draft labeling is required for the program, and draft instruction for use is required for the program. So regardless of which program, STEP or breakthrough, you still have to provide those three things and then your justification for meeting criteria of whichever program it is you're applying for. I hope that helps those people out there that aren't sure what's required for the breakthrough program. If you have any additional questions, I apologize for not getting it the first try, but please put a comments down in the questions or comments. Put your questions in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. Hope you have a great weekend, and thank you very much for watching. See you next week. Bye bye.